Hello, boys and girls.
My name is. What? Go ahead.
Welcome to TBOG. This is Matt Rhodes.
Joy Livingston. He's the host.
I'm your host with the most, Matt Rhodes. He's the host from the coast, Joey Livingston.
I'm not a host.
Co-host from the toast.
I've
Co-host.
asked to be host on this show several times, but I've been turned down.
Well, weren't you host one time? I was out of town, so you kind of took you kind of took the hosting
Substitute host.
Right. It's close enough, ain't it? Is that it's not good enough for you?
You know, I've been a substitute teacher before.
What?
Yeah,
What'd you teach?
They do not get treated with the same respect as a teacher, as a regular teacher. It was elementary school, so I taught all subjects.
Ah, what grade was it?
Probably second or third. Various grades. I did it several times.
Cool.
Yeah.
I like it. Where is this at?
It was
What
in
state?
Texas.
Texas.
Yes.
The Lone Star State.
Correct.
Texas. Truck. That's what it says on all the license plates.
Are you a goody two shoes?
I'm a goody frou-frous. I try to be a goody two-shoes. I just try to be on my toes and nice people and above everybody else.
Who do you think came up with the term goody two shoes?
I bet it came from the Isle of the UK.
The Isle of Obvious?
Isle of UK. The United Kingdom. I bet it originated probably from
I
Britain.
mean, imagine the first time that somebody said that, okay? Like, there are all kinds of names that we call people, like knucklehead,
Mm-hmm.
waterhead.
Pea bottom.
I don't
Old jumping bean.
looking for a jumping bean. Okay.
Old squiggly
But
shoe.
the term goody two shoes, it's like somebody couldn't come up with something better. Man, he's always doing the good. He's always doing good stuff. He's a goody. He's got two shoes. He's got two shoes on.
Look at him with his two shoes.
So
Always
good.
So good.
With his two shoes.
So rich you can afford
Who
two
doesn't
shoes.
Who doesn't wear two shoes?
It
doesn't matter whether you're good or bad. You've got two shoes on.
It depends on when this originated. If it was like way back in the day,
when they couldn't afford shoes.
when they had no shoes. Goody
so
no
goody
shoes.
meant like rich boy. Goody two shoes could have been rich boy.
Yeah, like somebody thinks they're above everybody else. Like, look at old Prince
Look,
Hemron.
with his shoes, thinks he's special.
Look at him, got these them new things out
With
called
his
shoes.
soft feet.
Them buttery soft feet. He cuts his toenails all
Mr.
the
Soft
time.
Feet. Mr. Lady Feet.
I bet them things don't even stink. Ugh. I hate it when you choke on water. I always choke on
You
water.
hate it when I choke on water?
Oh,
What are you doing?
I hate it when I choke on water.
That
I haven't eaten lunch today, so I'm eating some deviled eggs. And I'm pretty good. And since it's Easter, I believe it's very appropriate to have some deviled eggs. I brought enough for you.
I do like deviled eggs. That's gross, though, watching you do it.
What?
No, don't.
Let me get to my point, or our next point. My next point. Things really stick with you. I was
Hey
talking
guys, I got a great idea. Let me eat some deviled eggs on air.
I'm gonna eat some of them deviled eggs. It won't make me be quiet for 3 minutes. I promise.
This will be casual. Nobody will notice.
I was talking to you today, and you kind of just got done with a sort of a mini viewer marathon of sorts.
I spent probably 4 hours yesterday watching old clips of Andy Kaufman. Have you ever watched much of his stuff?
I've seen a couple clips. I haven't watched much of his clips. I've seen the Jerry Lawler clip and a couple other David Letterman clips. And of course,
the only thing that I had ever
Man
seen
on the Moon
of him
movie.
prior to yesterday was The Man on the Moon, in which Jim Carrey played Andy Kaufman.
Mm-hmm.
And that movie made me a fan of Andy Kaufman. and yet I had never seen
Right.
Andy Kaufman. So it's kind of like reading the Bible and becoming a fan of Jesus Christ. Oh, burn.
Slam.
Anyways.
Take that, Jesus.
Yeah. Take that, Jesus. I wasn't slamming Jesus. Forgive me. Anywho.
Goody two shoes, not slamming right. Jesus.
Anyways, The Man on the Moon was a great movie.
Yeah, I love that movie.
And I learned a lot about Andy Kaufman's life, if it be true.
Right.
And according to many, it was a very accurate movie. Mm-hmm. And Jim Carrey, claimed to do his very best to be Andy Kaufman and not Jim Carrey. And I think that was probably the best role he's ever played, Jim Carrey.
Yeah. I thought he did a great job.
Yeah, I mean, he completely lost himself.
You didn't even think of Jim Carrey
right
during the movie.
Exactly. So, but that movie portrayed Andy Kaufman as a comedian who was ahead of his time. Yeah. That was one of the main threads of that movie, was to say that Andy Kaufman was a misunderstood artist.
Right.
And, which struck a chord with me because I'm an artist, mm-hmm. and I'm often misunderstood.
Most artists are.
So I could identify.
Yeah. You related hardcore with the movie.
Right. As an artist who should be famous by now, I could certainly
I'm with you.
Sympathize with the character.
Yeah. We're here stuck in this smelly old studio, and we should be in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Drinking mixed drinks.
Me. I should.
Well, I'll come with you. And
yeah, you can come with me.
I'll tag along on your cocktails.
Yeah. You can carry my shoes.
Goody two shoes. Always have people carry your shoes.
Mr. People carrying your two shoes.
Both of them two shoes.
That's what you'll say the whole time you're carrying my shoes. You'll be all bitter.
So
he's making me carry his shoes.
Goody two shoes making me walk around West Vine Street with his two shoes. Hollywood Vine reference.
But anyways, that was the message of the movie, and I really didn't have any reference to know how true that was, because many argue that Andy Kaufman was just an idiot.
Right, just a lunatic. And
he was just out of his mind.
Had all these disorders.
And he had, a man of bad opinions,
mm-hmm.
And somebody who just hated the world.
Right.
And, after watching all those videos yesterday, my conclusion was, I actually can't argue whether he hated the world or not. I don't know. He was a man who hid himself. He did hide himself behind his comedy.
Right.
Many commented regarding Andy Kaufman that it was a rare opportunity when around Andy Kaufman to actually be able to speak to Andy Kaufman. Yeah.
So they'd go up to him, try to hang out with him, and he'd just be kind of
there was one executive of a television network who had spent a lot of time with Andy Kaufman, and he was remarking about a time when he was sitting down. He said, I was sitting down, I was talking with Andy Kaufman, and he said, which is a rare opportunity when you're around Andy Kaufman to actually be able to speak to Andy.
Right, the man.
Right.
Andy the man.
You never knew whether he was being serious with you or playing a joke.
Did he say kind of what his personality was like as himself?
Incredibly gentle, kind person. It was his remark, or something along those lines. That he was just a genuine person, very soft-spoken, mild-mannered type of person.
Just down to the core, good-natured type of guy.
Right. But he did all these crazy things, like one day he decided that he wanted to get into pro wrestling, and he made it a public thing that he wanted to become a pro wrestler. This guy was anything but a wrestler. Certainly was not made for sports.
Yeah, he didn't seem athletic.
Yeah, didn't need to be in tennis, much less pro wrestling. But he made it widely known that he was going to set out to become a pro wrestler, and he went about this by starting with women.
Well, that's where you start.
Yeah, he wrestled any woman that would challenge him. He guaranteed that there was not a single woman on the face of this earth who could defeat him in a wrestling competition. And he offered $1,000 to any woman who could pin both his shoulders to the mat. And he taunted them relentlessly about how they were not without brains. They had plenty of intelligence when it came to being in the kitchen and cooking food and cleaning house. But when it came to things, I don't remember all the things that he talked about that they weren't smart at, but one of them was wrestling. No doubt other things such as math and
math,
science. And he made a lot of women extremely angry.
I bet it infuriated a lot of the countries.
Yeah.
Because that was, what, was that in the 70s or 80s? Early 80s, late 70s?
This was in the 70s.
70s.
Yeah.
And that was at a time when the women's rights movement was in high gear.
Yeah, it was late 70s, early 80s. Yeah.
Yeah, I bet he pissed off a lot of women's.
Yeah. So yeah, he pissed off a lot of women, and consequently had a lot of wrestling matches with women, and he didn't lose one. He didn't lose a single match against any woman that he wrestled. He successfully pinned them down, and was extremely proud of it. And would just rub it right back in their face. I mean, he was not a good sport.
I beat you, girl.
Right. Inevitably, he ended up pissing this pro wrestler off that saw him wrestling women. His name was Jerry Lawler.
Jerry the King Lawler.
Right.
Good man.
And so Jerry, taunted Andy, and told him that challenged him to a wrestling match. Told him there's no way he could be a real wrestler. Called him a wimp, and Andy Kaufman ran from it for a while, not really ran from it, just acted like he wasn't scared.
Kind of hyped it up a little bit,
right? But shortly he made a video to Jerry Lawler, in which he called him a dumb Southern from Memphis, Tennessee. He talked just like that. From Memphis, Tennessee. You ain't got no brains or nothing. You ain't good for nothing but farming corn. And just taunted the mess out of Jerry Lawler.
Yeah.
And then proved to Jerry Lawler on video that he could beat him by wrestling a woman who weighed the same as Jerry Lawler or more, and showed him how he could defeat this woman who weighed the same as Jerry Lawler.
So she must have been pushing about 200, 220. Jerry Lawler was
I mean, it was a heavy woman.
That'd have been formidable.
Yeah.
Opponent.
And it was, I think it was in probably in Andy's own backyard in front of a swimming pool or something in the grass, and he went to it. He was relentless with her, and very quickly pinned her to the ground, got her on her stomach, and put her arms behind her back, and then grabbed her hair and shoved her hair like into the grass. And he was very, very mean about it, and so much so that the producers or whoever was filming came and stopped him. That was like, "Hey man, you're really going to hurt her." And Andy's comment was, "It doesn't matter. She's poor. She can't sue me." And then got back on her and grabbed her hair again and shoved it into the grass some more.
That's funny stuff. She's poor. She can't sue me. Who cares?
And then he agreed to wrestle Jerry Lawler.
Right.
And that match was catastrophic for Andy Kaufman. He supposedly broke his neck, and he went around, or Jerry Lawler broke his neck, and he wore a neck brace for months. Like it happened in, I think in April, and he was wearing the neck brace in August on the David Letterman show. Yeah. He and Jerry Lawler appeared on the David Letterman show, and they talked about his experience. They were not friendly towards one another. Right. On the David Letterman show, Jerry Lawler, talked very condescendingly towards Andy, and Andy, talked very condescendingly about Jerry's intelligence. And and Andy's pitch was always that there's no way that Jerry could defeat him because he was a dumb redneck from Memphis, Tennessee, and he was from Hollywood. Andy was from Hollywood. And he was much smarter than Jerry Lawler is, and it was as simple as that.
He knew how to push America's buttons.
Right.
Everybody hates people from Hollywood, like in the heartland of America. Oh, them Hollywood liberals.
So people hated Andy Kaufman,
right, because
of this arrogance that he had, and on David Letterman, he made Jerry Lawler so mad that Jerry Lawler slapped him out of his neck brace. I mean, he didn't come out of his neck brace, but he was in his neck brace. He slapped him, knocked him out of the chair on the show, and shocked David Letterman.
Yeah.
And Andy's career was going in. It was going down the tubes. When he just backing up a little bit, when he got hired, or when he was asked by the producers of Taxi to come on that show, he told them that the only way that they really wanted him on because he did this character called Lotka, I believe was his name. Is that right, Lotka?
I'm not sure. Was that on the show?
Yeah, the foreign it was his character that was typically called the foreign guy.
Right. Okay.
But I think his name ended up being Lotka on Taxi, but I don't know. I didn't watch much of Taxi, but anyways, they really wanted him on that show because of the character that he did on Saturday Night Live. They wanted him to take that character and become a permanent part of Taxi.
Right.
And Andy would not go on that show unless in the contract they also agreed to hire Tony Clifton. Now, according to Andy, Tony Clifton was a entertainer that he had met in Las Vegas, and he admitted that he had done impressions of Tony Clifton on in his bits, right? Because he was such a unique person, but that Tony Clifton was an actual person. Okay, now everybody in that day and time knew that, or anybody that knew Andy Kaufman during that time, they knew it was him. Yeah. I went back and watched just to see.
They knew Tony Clifton was Andy Kaufman.
I went back and watched videos of Tony Clifton, and in the movie, Tony Clifton is always wearing these big black sunglasses in the movie The Man on the Moon. Yeah. But what I found out in watching videos is that there were times when Andy Kaufman was playing Tony Clifton without the sunglasses on. It was obviously him. Yeah.
No doubt about it.
In the early days of doing Tony Clifton, he didn't have a big beer gut. He didn't have the big chops or anything. He was kind of a classy looking, nightclub singer with a little bit of gray hair. Right. But obviously Andy Kaufman, but had a real jerk personality on stage. He was very bullyish to his audience, etc. But it was only later that he had the sunglasses. There was a infamous show with Dinah Shore, and and they wanted Tony Clifton on the show. And Andy Kaufman's testimony is that they asked him to come on and to bring Tony Clifton, and he said they must have thought that I was Tony Clifton, right? But it was a misunderstanding. I'm not Tony Clifton, and Tony Clifton, he appeared on the show. And I didn't see this particular. I looked for it, but I didn't find it, and I ran out of time. But apparently, there was a moment when Tony Clifton got mad at Dinah Shore and threw an egg at her. on her live show.
Threw a egg at Diana Shore.
Maybe more than one. I think the words that I heard were that Tony Clifton threw eggs at Dinah Shore, and she's this like sweet, like soft spoken lady, And the part that I did see of him on the show, she was getting very uncomfortable because he came and he sang a song, and when he finished, he said, "I understood that I was going to sing." They were going on to a cooking bit, or a cooking part of the show, and he was standing right by her, and he was like, "I understood that I was going to sing 2 songs on your show," and she was like, your producers told us that you were too busy to sing 2 songs. She was trying to be kind, and he was like, "I thought you were going to sing a duet with me," and he was like getting right up in her face and stuff, and she was like, and at one point she said, "Well, we just thought it'd be funny, like a nice gag for you to come on," and she was trying to get him to like we know you're Andy Kaufman,
right?
And he just kept being very aggressive, and he finally made her do a duet with him right there. He like pulled out a piece of paper from his jacket and unfolded it with the lyrics, and it was "Anything you can do, I can do better." He made her do the duet with him right there.
Anything you can do.
Yeah, and so anyways, he made the producers of Taxi in the contract agree to also hire Tony Clifton, or he would not do it.
I'm not coming on unless Tony.
I'm not gonna be on Taxi.
My good buddy Tony.
Unless my good buddy Tony Clifton can be on as well. And so they worked in that Andy Kaufman would play. I mean, Tony Clifton would play the part of whatever Danny DeVito's character was, his brother.
Right.
Okay. And so the first day that Tony Clifton is supposed to show up, they're all waiting around to do the rehearsal, just the reading. And he is hours late. And then he shows up with a couple of prostitutes around his arm.
Andy Kaufman as Tony Clifton.
Yeah, Tony Clifton. Yeah. And he, makes a big scene, and he starts trying to change the script, make suggestions, trying to, he's just a very demanding person,
right.
a very unworkable, and it was either one day or two, but any time, whether it be one day or two that they put up with him, he was late extremely both times. And so they called Andy Kaufman and told him we're going to have to fire Tony Clifton. And Andy was out of town. He had to go, and I think he was shooting a movie or something at the time, quote unquote. But Andy's comment was, well, if you're going to fire him, be sure that the reasons are because of his lateness. Don't fire him because of his acting abilities, or you'll ruin his career.
You're going to ruin Tony Clifton's career.
Right.
Wow.
So they agree to that. And the executive who is telling the story in this documentary that I'm watching, he thinks Andy Kaufman's a genius. He was excited about firing Tony Clifton. And he wasn't going to do it himself. He had, I think, one of the directors fire him, but he and some other executives got together, and they wanted to be there when Tony Clifton got fired.
They knew it was going to be.
They knew it was going to be amazing,
right?
And so they got in, and they sat in the audience area, while Tony Clifton got fired, and Andy Kaufman called press. He had the press there, knowing that Tony Clifton was going to be fired.
Right.
He had them waiting outside for Tony. Well, of course, supposedly Tony Clifton called them.
Right.
Of
course.
And so there was press waiting outside, and he came in, supposedly not knowing what was going to happen. And he had his hose with him.
Had him hose with him.
A hoe on each arm. And they fired him, and he made a huge scene and would not leave. He was there for I think they said that he was probably there for an hour before they could even get him out of there. And the executive who was telling the story, he thought it was hilarious.
Yeah.
He said, I think he called it theater at its finest.
I would love to see that. Love to see that. Yeah, I think he's a genius too. Well ahead of his time. Like he was saying, a lot of comedians are doing what he used to do, and people love it.
Well, that's my point. Is that at the time, people hated him. They hated what he was doing towards women. Mm-hmm. They hated what he his arrogance toward Jerry Lawler. He got on the David Letterman show after his career was going in the tubes, and David Letterman was the only person that would let him on air. I mean, this guy doesn't quit.
Right.
His career is being ruined by his behavior, and David Letterman is the only person that will even let him be on the air. And he gets on there, and he's very sad. He's very down. He's very he's been beat down by life. He doesn't really have much to say, and David tries to talk to him, and he's just really not forthcoming, and he's not very conversational, not very social. And finally, David says, "Well, I understand that you have something that you're going to do for us, a performance or something." And Andy says, "Well, yeah, I can do that." And he says, "Okay, well, we have you just walk over there." And so he walks over there, and he sits on this stool, and he just starts talking about how horrible his life is, how his wife has left him, and she took his kids and most of his money, and nobody will hire him anymore, and he doesn't have a place to live anymore, and he's pretty much homeless, and he just goes on, and people are laughing, and then he says, if you could just stop laughing, I'm really not trying to make you laugh right now. And he just keeps talking about how horrible things are. And then finally he ends by saying, if there's anybody that could just, give me a hand or just help me out here. And he just slowly gets up with his hand extended.
Right.
And begins to walk slowly towards David Letterman's audience and starts to beckon people. Yeah, panhandle. He starts to beckon people to give him some money to help him out. And he gets several people to give him some money before security finally comes and just escorts him out. And he, he's being escorted out and saying, "I don't understand what I did wrong, and what's going on here." And David Letterman is just kind of shaking his head, and he's like, "Well, I think he makes some comment about the young talent of today or something." But the point to this is that Andy Kaufman was most certainly joking from beginning to end.
Right.
If you look at it from that's my opinion. Other people are going to have their opinion, but to me it's clear. It's obvious. I was in tears laughing watching most of this stuff. I mean, there are times when you're just kind of watching him.
Right.
And there you have no laughter at all. This I can't remember this executive's name, but this executive who was telling this story about firing Tony Clifton, he said that Andy Kaufman was the most brilliant comedian he had ever seen in his life, and he had such an odd way of trying to make people laugh. He said that he would sit there, and if what he was doing wasn't making you laugh, he would just keep doing it until it did make you laugh.
Right.
It didn't matter how long it took. He had the balls to sit in front of an audience for an hour reading just a novel, of Mice and Men, and just sit there and read it and even through anger, through whatever emotion that they had to go through until they finally just laughed.
Right.
At him just sitting there reading, of Mice and Men or To Kill a Mockingbird. And I mean, imagine sitting in front of 3,000 people expecting you to do your foreign guy bit.
Right.
And all you're gonna do is sit there and read them a novel.
Right.
Until they laugh.
Keep reading
until they laugh.
Until you get a response.
Yeah.
Good laugh.
Yeah, a laugh. And but looking back, when you watch his bits, or when I did, I would sit there with this look on my face, watching it, analyzing it, until I reached this moment to where I would just bust out laughing. It just
starts to sink in.
Yeah, I was just in tears laughing, just especially realizing that in his day, most of the people did not. There never came to that point for them. That point never arrived for them in which they finally got it, and he never winked.
Right.
The guy never winked. He never let the audience know, hey,
just fooling,
just joking around.
JK.
If they didn't get it, they didn't get it. Yeah. He wasn't going to give it to them.
This was for the people who got it. Nobody else.
That's not a style that I like to joke without winking, but that's not a style that I can follow through on if the audience never gets it. I want people to get it. I want people to get. If I'm joking, I want somebody to get that. Yeah. I don't want them to not have fun. And I think there's something to be said for that. To want your audience to have fun.
Right.
But I have to admire Andy Kaufman because in anybody who aspires to comedy, there is the desire not to wink.
Right.
The best moments in comedy is when you can really take somebody a long way in thinking that you're serious, and then it dawns on them that you're not, and you have never nodded, you never tipped your hat, you've never winked. They just finally understand. It finally clicks. That's the perfect moment for, in my opinion, a perfect moment for a comedian.
Yeah.
I don't know that there's ever been anybody, at least in, this century or the one before it, who has been so determined to always get that moment.
Right. Yeah. I can't think of anyone who's just gone to that much of an extreme. But maybe
go through years.
Right.
I mean, Andy Kaufman would take a joke for years and never let it go.
Right. I mean, people didn't know about the Letterman thing until after he was dead, right?
Yeah. Well, Jerry Lawler, the pro wrestler who supposedly broke his neck, 10 years after Andy Kaufman died, confessed that they were actually good friends. That he and Andy Kaufman were good friends, and that it was a joke from beginning to end. The wrestling the women was a joke. I mean, he's portraying this character that's extremely sexist,
right.
And whether it be his intent or not, he really made a fool out of sexists.
Yeah, he showed people what they are.
Whatever his opinion was towards women, it certainly was not that.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, maybe we really don't know or I don't know what his position was on women's rights, but it certainly wasn't that they had brains only when it came to cooking and cleaning.
Yeah, I don't think
he made a fool of that attitude.
Yeah.
And people hated him, but they never got that what they hated was that mentality. Only.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure they did understand that they hated that mentality, but they didn't understand that he was just making that point.
Yeah, just let people know, hey, this is what a sexist is. Maybe you see yourself in this.
And he made a fool of people who were that arrogant, who would take things that far. And I don't believe that for once he felt like he could win a match against Jerry Lawler.
Yeah,
no. I don't feel like for once he felt like he was accomplishing some great feat of strength by not being pinned by any woman that he wrestled.
Right, that's just ridiculous.
It's a hilarious joke,
I'm gonna show y'all how strong I am. I'm not gonna let no woman on earth can pin me.
Yeah. Jerry Lawler, professional wrestler, I will prove to you that I can beat you at wrestling by beating a woman who weighs as much as you and has never wrestled before.
Right. It was hilarious. It's good stuff. But I think, we haven't seen many or any really comedians that took it that far in this day and age. But maybe because comedy has evolved so much as to where people get
Andy Kaufman's humor today. Right. And comedians, and some of my favorite comedians carry his style of comedy forward. Kristen Shaw is a great example. She's a brilliant comedian, and in her bit, she is always trying to make the audience believe that she is crashing and burning. She always tries to make her audience believe that something has happened in her bit that has gone terribly wrong, and that it's a train wreck.
And it's going to be lucky if it's going to be a miracle if she even makes it through the rest of it.
But the audience picks up on it immediately these days. They get it. Mm-hmm. Like there was this one bit where she her boyfriend was in the audience, and before she did this skit, have you seen this?
Yeah.
before she did this skit. Did we watch it together?
We did.
Okay. Before she did this skit,
I watched it with you.
she asked him up on stage to tell him how much she loved him, and it was their anniversary, and what she wanted to give to him was to propose to him,
Right.
and
On
marry,
stage.
and you know, and she was giving him her heart, and he on stage he told her no, and you know that it was nice of her to ask, but that you know he wasn't ready for that,
Right.
and so through the whole next skit, she is falling apart slowly. She's trying to keep it together, but she's just slowly falling apart. She stops in moments and tries to, and just asks him, is it me, and she's trying to do this play, and she's just her life has reached this moment that it's ruined.
Right. It's a crucial point in somebody's life. The normal person would be crushed. Yes, she's on stage and has to go through with the rest of it.
And that's very much a Kaufman-esque joke.
Right.
But the audience gets it these days, and most people love it. But back then, they didn't understand.
Yeah, they just.
I think that these days, if there was a Tony Clifton, or I don't know how long the bit lasts with the wrestling women, but if it lasted 3 years, I don't think it would make people angry like it made them back then.
Right.
I don't think it's that people have a problem with how long a joke lasts, as long as it continues to be funny.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, then they just stop laughing. I don't think they, get angry. They just, there are probably a lot of trolls out there that do, but, they're called trolls these days.
Douches.
Yeah.
D-bags.
But anyways, we only have a few minutes left here. Let me just say that, Andy Kaufman died of a rare form of lung cancer, and his death was in a way sad because he had spent years speaking with his confidants about faking his death.
Right.
He was thinking that would be the ultimate joke if he could convince people that he died, and. So, supposedly, he said that if he did fake his death, that he would return 20 years later. That would have been in 2004, because he died in 1984.
Yeah.
He wanted to fake his death, and he ended up really, really dying, supposedly, unless we're still in the middle of a Kaufman joke.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, and so many people at that time didn't believe that he died. They thought it was just another joke.
He said he's gonna fake his death.
Little boy who cried wolf.
Yeah.
And that's certainly the price you pay for being that dedicated of a prankster.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure that he would have accepted that as the moral to his story. I think that he's probably happy with people, thinking that he might be joking.
Right. Yeah. I think he's thrilled.
Yeah.
I think he died very happy, knowing. I think he knew that later people may get it.
Yeah.
I think he knew that, and I think he's a freaking trendsetter.
Jim Carrey was on the Actors Studio.
Inside the Actors Studio with
James Lipton.
James Lipton.
Yeah. He was hilarious as always. Jim Carrey is brilliant in his own right. But James Lipton asked Jim Carrey why he thought that Andy Kaufman was the way he was, that he was such a unique comedian. See, Andy Kaufman was a rich white boy. He came from wealth.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Which is rare for a comedian of his brilliance to come out of. Yeah. Normally, comedy comes from, some sort
dreams.
Well, comedy typically, I don't know of an exception, comes from some form of pain. It's the way that we deal with pain.
Tears of a clown.
Right. And so I found that out before I saw this interview, and James Lipton asked Jim Carrey, why he thought Kaufman was the way he was, and Jim Carrey said, I think it's simple. He said he was a boy who had never been accepted by his father. His father never accepted who he was. And I thought it was certainly a brilliant theory, because he said, you look at his foreign guy, and he's such a sweet character, always wanting the approval of the audience, doing anything that he can, very soft spoken, just wanting to be loved.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have Tony Clifton, who is the complete antithesis, rebelling against any form of authority,
right.
that confronts him, and those were his two main characters. Yeah.
Both extremes of the human psyche.
Yeah.
I love you, Dad.
The movie Man on the Moon opens with.
I'm sorry.
Are you done?
I had a sniffle.
Okay. The movie Man on the Moon opens with this amazing scene, and I saw it on these clips of Andy Kaufman, and Jim Carrey does an amazing job of replicating that moment, in which Andy Kaufman, the foreign guy, he plays the foreign guy, and he goes on stage. Everybody understands him. When Andy Kaufman made his appearance, that often he would be the foreign guy. Mm-hmm. And that's who people thought he was. Right. And sometimes they didn't think, oh, this is Andy Kaufman playing a foreign guy. They thought this guy coming on stage was the foreign guy. Right. Whatever his name, whatever he called himself. It may have been Andy Kaufman, but that's who they thought Andy Kaufman was.
Right.
He would talk like this, and he would say, "Ladies and gentlemen, I want to do impression for you, and now I will do for you Jimmy Carter, President of the United States." And it was the most horrible impression of Jimmy Carter, right. Or he on Johnny Carson he did Ed McMahon, and he would just basically say something that he thought he heard him. My name is Jimmy Carter, President of the United States. Thank you very much. And people would die laughing because it was just ridiculous. The guy was just a joke, a walking joke.
Right.
But then he would come to his impression of Elvis Presley, and he now I will do for you my impression of Elvis Presley, and he would turn around and he would pull the strings off of his pants, and his pants would come off, and this jumper would be revealed, and he would brush his hair, and he would turn around and he would do what most people regard as the most amazing impression of Elvis Presley that anybody has ever done. And he could have just, in that day and age, he could have just done an impression of Elvis Presley.
Right. They would have went nuts.
And they would have went nuts. But the fact that he contrasted it against these horrible impressions by this timid foreign guy,
right.
just blew people away.
Right. I mean, that's pure genius.
Yeah, that is genius. So
what time it is?
What time it is? Time it is 4:48. Oh God, you're eating another.
Well, thanks for educating us on Andy Kaufman.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I really appreciate that.
I really just watched a lot of TV. Yeah.
All right. You brought great content to the show by watching all that TV. You brought quality programming to the show on this day, Easter Sunday. For that, I thank you. Was you any last comments before we go?
Andy Kaufman, we love you, and we will see you on the other side.
See you on the other side, Andy. We love you. Everybody stay cool. And don't beat your kids. Love you.
Andy, I'm sorry about Matt.
Forgive me, Kaufman, for I have sinned.
Are we off the air yet?